This is Mrs. Reister with your review video for Learning Target 10. To sum it up, Learning Target 10 is all about converting a rational number to a decimal. So in essence, we are taking a fraction and we'll be representing it as a decimal. So let's begin with question 1, which is the fraction 5/8. So to convert a fraction to a decimal, ultimately we take the numerator divided by the denominator, or in other words, we put the top dog in the house. So when we convert this, we line it up, or we set it up as long division, where the numerator, or the top dog, as I said, goes in the house with the denominator outside. And then we need to add a decimal to that 5, and then we can add a series of zeros. I suggest always starting with 3 zeros, and then you can determine if you need to add more or not based on how it's working out with your division. So now we can begin the division. And I'm going to move my decimal point straight up before I do that, and then I can proceed as normal. So 8 does not go into 5, but it does go into 50. 8 times 6 is 48. I can subtract and get 2, bring down my 0. It goes into 22 times, which is 16. Bring down my 0. 8 goes into 40. It goes in evenly 5 times. When I subtract, I get 0, so that signifies the end of my division. My final answer here is 0.625, or 625 thousandths. And we call this decimal a terminating decimal because it simply ends. There is no pattern of repetition. It simply ends. So this is considered terminating. And now we have one more, -3 and 11/16. Now this is a mixed number, but the steps to go through finding the decimal representation are still the same. We notice that we have this -3 as the integer, and what we can do right now is just leave that off to the side, because we know that any whole number, and in this case an integer, but it is a whole, we can leave it off to the side because we know that any whole number is to the left of the decimal point. So what I'm going to focus on is just this fraction right here, 11/16. So again, top dog in the house. Add my decimal point and 3 zeros. 16 does not go into 11, but it does go into 110. I am going to use a little bit of guess and check, and so I'm just going to start with 6. Multiply 16 times 6. And I know that it's got to be a 6 because 16 times 6 is 96. And if I were to add 16 to the 96, I would exceed 110. So 6 goes here. Move my decimal point up. And now I subtract. $14, bring down my 0. So now I've got 140. Now we knew that 16 times 6 was 96, so it's got to be greater than 6 for however many times it goes into 140. So the same idea here, I'm going to use a little bit of guess and check. This time I'm going to try 8. 6 times 8 is 48. 12. Now I'm going to try one more time. 16 times 7. I did not mean to do 7, my bad. What I was thinking was doing one more, 16 times 9. Sorry for that, I had to let my brain catch up with my mouth. 16 times 9, here we go. 9 times 6 is 54. 9 times 1 plus 5 is 13. 14, excuse me. Which is too much. So we know that 8 must be how many times it can go in evenly. So we've got 128 here. And now to subtract, I've got 12. Now I'm going to bring down my 0, so 120. And looking here at 16 times 8, which is 128, we know that it's not 8, it must be 7. So to test that out, 16 times 7 is 112. So I'm going to subtract. I've got 8. Now, in this case, because I'm not done and I just have that 8 here, I am going to add another 0 so that I can bring it down. And now I've got 16 times something to get me close or equal to 80. So let's try 5. 5 times 6 is 30. 5 times 1 is 5 plus 3 is 8. And here we are. It goes in evenly. And your final answer is 0.6875. So looking ahead, or looking at our initial our initial mixed number was -3 and 11/16. So we're going to put that -3 to the left of the decimal point. And then what we got with our division is what goes to the right, 6875. So -3.6875 is the decimal equivalent to -3 and 11/16. And this would also be considered a terminating decimal.